Everyone thought he was a lonely nerd who was always bullied, but he ends up making a harem of beautiful girls. Joro is an ordinary high schooler living an ordinary life until one day his world turns upside down when the student council president Cosmos asks him out. As her secretary, he had always worked closely with her and in the process had grown to deeply admire her, and being asked to go on a date by her sends his heart racing. The riverside picnic date ends up going really well, and as the sun is setting, Cosmos asks him to come closer and shyly confesses that she likes someone. Just as Joro is wholly prepared to accept her feelings, she reveals that she has a massive crush on his best friend's son. Last year, she saw the school baseball team's captain keeping his feelings aside and motivating his teammates after a massive loss. She found his leadership really appealing and has been in love with him ever since. She requests Joro to be her wingman and help her get together with Sun. Although heartbroken, Joro, being the kind person that he is, agrees to help her out. The next day, Joro decides to move on and go out with his childhood best friend Hima, whose invitation he had turned down the previous day because he thought was going to get some intergalactic action. Still, all he can think about during the date is yesterday's embarrassing rejection. Hima notices this, and when he refuses to share what happened, she decides to uplift his mood with the most fun day ever. Joro eventually starts feeling better and decides to live in the moment. He treats Hima to an expensive meal and buys her multiple gifts throughout the day. At the end of the date, Hima confesses that she has really deep feelings for a guy. Joro's excitement quickly starts spiraling into horror when her confession starts sounding very familiar. She ends up revealing that she would like to date Sun, as she too fell in love with him on the day of the baseball game for the very same reason. She asks him to be her wingman, and seeing no other way to get out of there, he agrees. That night, he starts throwing and breaking stuff in his room because his plan of acting like an ordinary but sensitive guy in high school has completely belly-flopped and no girls like him. Suddenly, he realizes that there are two girls interested in one guy, so only one of them can date Sun, and he can bag the other one as long as he keeps up his nice guy act. The next morning, as he is walking to school, Hima catches up to him and starts talking strategy with him. Before anything else, though, he confesses that he is helping Cosmos too to keep everything transparent, but promises that he will still help her. She eventually calms down enough to trust him, and they decide to go through with a plan that he has thought up for her. Once they reach school, Joro enters the class without Hima, which is so unusual that Sun notices right away. As he is discussing this with Joro, Hima, who is hiding outside, barges in, according to the plan, but makes a pathetic attempt at trying to seem natural. Somehow, Joro salvages the situation and excuses himself with some student council work to give the two some alone time. He then calls Cosmos to the student council room and tells her the same thing he told Hima, promising that he will help her as well. After she has been convinced that he will not mess up her chance, he tells her the plan he has thought up for her. They run into Sun in the hallway, at which point Cosmos is supposed to use the pretext of discussing the baseball team budget to become friends with him. But instead, she ends up blurting out that she wants to friends with him. Joro rescues her sorry ass by explaining that he suggested she get to know Sun, who is an important underclassman, because it'll help her carry out her job as president better. Later at lunch, he hides from both the girls in the library to catch a break from their madness. As he is deep in thoughts, the school nerd Pansy walks up to him to make small talk. He tries to avoid her because she is always rude to him for some reason. But she reveals that she knows all about his deals with Hima and Cosmos. She has been stalking him for a while and has all the evidence she needs to spill the beans to Sun. When he reluctantly agrees to talk, she reveals that she ordered the same park bench that the other girls used to confess their feelings to him. She sits in the same position and confesses that there is someone she is in love with. Joro prays to all the gods that she also reveals it's Sun, but loses his shit when she admits that she likes Joro. He is cursing his luck for making her fall for him out of every girl in school and tries to gently turn her down. But she cuts him off and says that she doesn't like the nice guy act and that she's in love with the real Joro. After hearing that, he turns into a gigachad and straight up tells her that he will never go out with her. She replies that going out is not what she has in mind anyway, and instead asks him to come to the library every day at lunch and talk to her. He is forced to agree since he doesn't want to be exposed. The next day, Hima buys 2 tickets for the movies and asks Joro to give them to Sun and set up a date sneakily. Joro walks up to Sun and tells him that he got 2 tickets from a friend to a movie that he has watched already, so instead of wasting them, Sun should take them and go with someone else like Hima. She immediately jumps into the conversation and agrees to come. But to their surprise, Sun just hands her his ticket and tells her to enjoy. Joro, being the quick thinker that he is, reminds Sun about how busy he has been lately with baseball and how he can use a break. This finally convinces Sun, and he agrees to go with Hima to the movies the coming Saturday. Later that day, Cosmos shows Joro the homemade lunch that she has brought for Sun and requests him to set up a scenario where Sun and she eat together. After classes, Joro asks Sun to help him with some student council files as an excuse to get him to the council room. Cosmos is waiting for them in the corridor. She awkwardly breaks out in Shakespearean English to ask Sun if he would want to have lunch on the rooftop in the pleasant weather outside despite there being storm clouds brewing. Joro chimes in and reminds him how this would really help their newly formed friendship. Cosmos adds that she has packed enough food for 2 people, including his favorite grilled pork dish. To both of their surprise, though, Sun invites Joro as well, but Joro quickly announces that he already has plans to meet another girl during lunch and runs off. Joro then ends up at the library and vents to Pansy how little riz both the girls have. As she gives him the cookies she baked for him, she asks what will happen to his plans if Sun already likes some other girl. His dumb head had not about that possibility at all, and the realization hits him like a brick and he starts panicking, but she demands a reward for helping him out. He nervously asks her what she wants, to which she suggests he be the one to conduct this year's school council library inspection. He begrudgingly agrees. Later that day, he decides to find out whether Sun likes someone and turns up in the middle of his basketball practice to ask him directly. Sun starts blushing and tells him that he is uncomfortable talking about it in public and takes him outside to the courtyard. As they settle into the PTSD-inducing bench, Sun confesses that he likes Pansy. When they had lost the baseball game a year ago, he had run into her while he was crying and she had encouraged and consoled him. He has been really touched by her since that moment because that was the first time he could be vulnerable with someone. He then goes ahead to ask Joro if he can be his wingman. Knowing that his head will be on a spike if he agrees and goes against the 2 girls, Joro unwillingly denies him. He claims that he does not know Pansy a lot and hence cannot help him. Then, Sun switches the topic and asks him for baseball advice, to which Joro motivates him to work hard and trust his teammates. As he comes back inside the school, he contemplates the choices that he now has in front of him. He cannot seem to figure it out and immediately calls Pansy to meet him in the corridor and advise him regarding this. He directly asks her what she thinks about Sun, which takes her aback. She claims that she wants to be with Joro only, but he keeps insisting that he would like to see her with Sun, who is a lot better than him anyway. This eventually pisses Pansy off, and she swats his hand away, which causes all heads to turn their way. She asks him to shut up and tells him that all she wants is to talk to Joro and keep baking cookies for him. Just as Joro is about to say more, Sun shows up and completely misreads the situation. Just as Sun is going to burst out at Joro for betraying him and asking out his crush behind his back, Pansy tells him that Joro was here just on council business. She tells him about the library inspection that'll happen later that day and ends up saving Joro's ass. Sun finds it hard to believe at first because the scene looked tense, but she explains that it's because she worked up over talks of the library being closed because no one visits it. She then makes it very obvious and clear that she hates Joro and simply walks away. Once she's gone, Joro notices that she dropped the bag of cookies on the floor. One evening, he is so tired that he crashes on his bed as soon as he reaches home. Peace does not last long, though, as he receives a text from Cosmos asking him to meet her as soon as possible. As soon as he arrives at the restaurant worried out of his mind, he spots Cosmos sulking in one of the corner booths. She tells him that Sun asked her to use her charismatic president personality to win over Pansy and then set him up with her. She also tells him that Sun told her he already asked Joro for help, and when he refused, he told him to ask his other friends for help by using a baseball example. She asks Joro to stay away from her life if all that he wants to do is lie and betray her. Before he can say anything, she gets up and walks away. The next day, he is called home by Hima. When he arrives, she immediately tells him that Sun asked her for the same favor. Joro tries to apologize for not telling her about Sun's true feelings before, but still ends up making her cry. She also reveals that Sun told her that Joro advised him to rely on his friends to score Pansy by using a baseball metaphor. He tries to defend himself by honestly telling her he had no idea he was giving anything other than baseball advice, but she lands an uppercut into his jaw and knocks him out of his chair before walking away. She asks him to stay away and not bother to help any further just as she slams the door behind her. The next morning as Joro walks to school, he is hit by the loneliness that losing Cosmos and Hima has caused him. As he is deep in thought, Sun catches up to him out of nowhere and reassures Joro that he is there if Joro ever wants to vent about the reason behind his very obvious bad mood. Just as he walks away, Joro receives a text from Pansy calling him to the library. As soon as he steps inside, she reveals that she knows about what went on with Sun and the two girls, which annoys the hell out of Joro. He loses control and is about to throw hands with her when the library door opens and in walk Cosmos, Sun and Hima together. Seeing Joro with Pansy pisses Sun off, and he starts accusing him of lying to him about not knowing her. When Joro protests, Hima and Cosmos announce that they were also lied to by him. As they go on attacking him, he loses his cool and lets his true self out. He tells them to go to hell because, unlike Sun, their anger at him is invalid. He worked so hard for them, even when they were basically useless without him. But when they messed up, it was somehow his fault. He yells out that was just used as a tool by these women, which shuts them up. Their guilty reactions are just what Joro wants, and he thinks to himself that all that's left is to straighten things out with Sun. Then, to his absolute surprise, Pansy butts in and questions why he was encouraging her to get together with Sun if he was so sincerely helping out Hima and Cosmos. He is too stunned to speak, so Pansy just fuels the fire even more by telling everyone that Joro told her he was planning to snatch away the girl that Sun rejects out of the two. Just as Joro starts protesting, Sun demands him to apologize to the girls and punches his face with full force, which knocks him into a shelf. He then picks Joro up and swings him on his shoulder while warning him to stay away from the girls here on out. As he carries Joro out of the room, Sun confesses that he would have liked to be his best friend for life. But after all of this, he doesn't want to be associated with him. Before the door closes behind them, Pansy whispers to Joro that she should have faith in him. The next few days, Joro keeps hearing gossip in the school about how he betrayed and destroyed his friends. There was a girl in the library the other day that no one had noticed in the heat of the fight, and she had ended up spreading gossip all around the school. He even gets kicked out of the school council by Cosmos, which further mars his life with loneliness and depression. Just as he is settling down for the next class, he gets a text from Pansy asking him to come to the library for lunch as she wants to tell him her true feelings. He just wants to be alone and especially not talk to Pansy after her betrayal, but she threatens to make something terrible happen if he doesn't show. He jumps to the point as soon as he enters, but she asks him to get a book for her from the shelves first. As he is browsing through the shelves, he is caught off guard by Sun suddenly entering the library and sitting down in front of Pansy. Joro hides behind the bookshelves and is forced to eavesdrop on their conversation. As Pansy starts scolding him for spending every lunch here instead of with his friends, Sun cuts her off and invites her to come watch him practice next time. Pansy simply ignores this and out of nowhere asks him the reason why he resorted to tricking and trapping Joro. Initially, Sun simply pretends to have no idea about whatever she is talking about, but she reveals that she is seen through his plan completely after talking to him for a week. He already knew how Hima and Cosmos felt about him because of how obvious they were, but ignored them so that he could trap Joro when he decided to help them. He wanted there to be bad blood between them and Joro when they failed to win him so that he could take their trust away from him. When Joro refused to help him with his romantic life, he immediately switched to revenge mode and asked Cosmos and Hima for romantic help while revealing Joro always knew to screw him over. The nail in the coffin was the lunchtime confrontation that he got Joro caught in. Sun reminds her that even she herself had opposed Joro, but she says that it was simply to hide that she was on Joro's side so as to get to talk to Sun over the week and get all the information that she could. After hearing all of this, Joro spirals into deep sadness triggered by such an elaborate betrayal planned by his best friend of so many years. Meanwhile, Pansy is pushing Sun to tell her the reason behind the betrayal. He eventually admits that it was because he lost to Joro. Back in middle school, a girl had asked him to set her up with Joro, even though he was the one with a crush on her. He had done everything he could to get her to like him, but she ended up falling for Joro, who did not give a damn about her. He tried telling her about the dark sides of Joro, but that did not affect her feelings for him in the slightest. He calms down after a while and asks Pansy straight away if she likes Joro and is that why she is looking out for him. When she confirms, he just sighs and accepts the fact that he has lost again to his best friend. He then tells her how this was his perfect chance for revenge, as Joro was doing the exact same thing that he was doing in middle school. While laughing, he tells her how he knew that he could manipulate the girls and get them to listen to anything that he says because they're head over heels for him. He then asks Pansy why she likes Joro despite his lousy nature. She makes him realize that Joro is in fact a very kind person. Even though he agreed to help the girls out, his first priority was to make Sun happy, which is why he tried to convince her to go out with Sun. The fact that Sun betrayed Joro despite this is the reason why Pansy can never care for him or be with him. When he asks her why she cares for Joro so much, it turns out that her story too, like everyone else's, began at the baseball tournament last year. Before she ran into Sun, she saw Joro waiting for him near the exit for a very long time. He was standing under the bright hot sun with Sun's favorite dish in his hands despite everyone laughing at him and mocking him. Even today, Joro acts without any jealousy or selfishness for Sun's sake, even if it means him having to let go of his own dreams. This kindness of Joro's is what Pansy loves about him. Sun gets ticked off and reminds her how no one comes to the library during lunch and threatens her, saying that he could do anything he wants to her and no one would notice. She stands her ground unfazed and asks him to go ahead. When he is shocked that she does not try to escape, she tells him that escape is unnecessary as she is sure that Joro will protect her. Joro takes this as his cue and comes out of his hiding place and walks up to Sun, who is shocked to see him there. Joro agrees with Sun's earlier comment that Hima and Cosmos are stupid. After all, they use a guy like a tool and drop him at the smallest inconveniences. Sun nervously tries to laugh it off, but Joro then squeezes Sun's shoulder and warns him to not laugh at the girls' feelings. He grabs hold of his collar and tells him that the girls have taken a lot of efforts for him. He lifts him off the ground and warns him to not use the girls that love him before dropping him to the ground. He finally lets Sun go after he promises to apologize to them and never hurt them again. As soon as he leaves, Pansy apologizes for not being on his side the last time and goes up to kiss him. However, he just starts walking away, claiming that he hates her, and now that the Sun scenario is sorted, there is no reason for him to keep coming here. He is about to walk out of the library one last time when Pansy confesses that she will miss him a lot. He pauses for a minute, but eventually grabs a hold of himself and walks out. The next day, Joro runs into Cosmos near the lockers. She meekly apologizes to him before running away. He opens his locker after reeling from the confusion and is shocked to see that no bully has messed with his stuff for the first time after the entire Sun fiasco. He enters the class to see that Hima is protecting his stuff from the bullies and is taken aback by this. Later in the day, when the last class wraps up, Sun gets on his hands and knees before everyone and confesses to everything that he did. Joro immediately walks up to the library to tell Pansy about all of this. After teasing him for a while, she asks him if he knows the real reason why Sun likes her. When he tells her about the baseball game incident, she tells him that Sun was lying about it, and that she had just given him her name at the time because he had asked. He asks her why else he likes her, to which she takes off her glasses and undoes her hair to reveal that she is actually a total beauty. He finally recognizes that the angel he saw on the day of the games was actually her. She again asks him if he plans to stay away from the library, but this time the incel agrees to keep coming. This makes her so happy that she immediately plants a kiss on his cheek. He starts blushing, but he keeps insisting that he hates her. He is sure that even though they can become friends, he will never be able to fall for her. A few days later at lunch, Pansy tries to feed Joro the freshly baked sweets that she has brought for him, but he gets irritated and stops her. He reminds her that he has been coming to the library every day just as she wants, but she doesn't put the effort to look good for him. She claims that she dresses like a hobo because a demon is after her, and so she must disguise herself, but he tells her to cut the crap. Finally, she tells him she doesn't like that he comes to the library, mostly because he is hiding from Hima and Cosmos, and urges him to reconcile with them. He gets ready to leave, but she stops him and reassures him that if he honestly tells them how he feels, they will understand. Moreover, he has nothing to lose as they are already in the worst situation possible. She eventually manages to convince him, and he gets ready to go into battle by chomping onto one of her cupcakes. He gathers his courage and enters the classroom, but is immediately stopped by Hina, who is the ace reporter for the school newspaper. She is conducting a survey about the flower festival, which makes him laugh because everyone knows how disinterested the classes are in it. She then reminds him of the popular flower dance that takes place during it, where one guy gets to dance with 3 female partners. Legend has it that the boy chosen for the dance ends up marrying one of the 3 girls in the end. As he is giving her his opinion about the students that he thinks will be chosen, he notices Hima struggling with her mid-semester prep at her desk. She begs for someone to help her understand the subject and looks right at them. However, Joro ends up wasting time thinking and loses his chance as Hina bolts up to her to help instead. He is about to give up, but he remembers his conversation with Pansy and decides to walk up to Hima regardless and make an opportunity for himself. He interrupts Hina and declares that he will be the one helping Hima. However, Hima gets so awkward that she simply runs out of the class. He is chasing her down the stairs when she suddenly slips and falls. He rushes up to check in on her, but she asks him to stay away and gets up to walk away. However, he grabs a hold of her and reassures her that he does not consider her a troublemaker. They lose their marbles and end up in a fight about who will apologize first, but soon realizing how dumb they are acting, they calm down and decide to be friends again. He offers to study together, but tells her that he would need her help with something before that. She calls Sun to the rooftop upon Joro's request, where he hands Sun a letter of challenge. While Sun is mentally preparing for manly challenges like baseball or something, Joro throws a googly at him saying that the challenge he has in mind is studying. He tells Sun that if he manages to pass the next midterm exams, he will be declared the winner, but if he fails, Joro will win. As per the plan, Hima then suggests that all 3 of them study together so as to help Sun study for his exams and win the challenge. Sun sees through the plan and turns to leave, but Hima rushes in front of him and blocks his way. Realizing that this is never going to work, Joro then gathers up his guts and honestly confesses that he wants to be friends with Sun again. Hima and Joro keep bombarding him with their request until he finally realizes how much he missed these idiots and agrees to reignite their friendship. A happy Joro arrives at the library after school to meet Pansy and slyly tries to ask her to help them study. Pansy agrees to do it, but makes it clear that she could see through his plan easily. She also asks him to take her somewhere nice in return, and he has no choice but to agree. She then tells him that they can invite one more person in their study group, referring to Cosmos. Joro fails to take the hint and tells her that these are the only people he knows. Cosmos, who is listening from her hiding place outside the room, is pissed off and walks away. A few days later, as Joro is strolling around in the corridor, he is stopped by Hina, who asks him if he is free. He tells her that he is going for his study group when he suddenly feels a chilly aura and turns around to see that Cosmos is here. This reminds him that he had forgotten about her, and he immediately rushes to talk to her. He finds her sitting on the stairs and crying. He overhears her talking about how she has been practicing her reconciliation strategy, but to no use. When she seems to think that Joro does not care at all about her, he immediately steps forward and reassures her that he does. He spins some bullshit about saving the best for the last and manages to calm her down. Later that day, the gang shows up at the library and decides to start studying right away. Joro tells them that initially Pansy and him had planned to tutor them, but now since Cosmos, who is their senior, is here as well, she might be better equipped to teach. She decides to start off with math and hands each of them a crazy 5,000 problems to solve on that day itself. Everyone loses their shit and Pansy craftily gets out of the situation by suggesting that she will be tutoring Hima for Japanese, as that is her weakest area. Sun, on the other hand, has already given up and has prepared for his soul to leave the world. As evening approaches, the girls leave from a very fulfilling work session, while the boys are completely dead inside from solving Cosmos' questions. Motivated by their enthusiasm, Cosmos declares that she will prepare 8,000 questions for English the next day. This sets off some banter between everyone, which makes Joro unbelievably happy. He is hell-bent to forever save this happiness, and this gives him immense motivation to keep doing his best for his friends. He is pulled out of his dream by his friends, who are waiting for him a little further ahead. The banter continues as they all walk home excited for this new chapter in their friendship. Soon the school is done with midterms and results are announced. Joro is ambushed on his way to school by Hima, who is jumping around because both Sun and she passed. She is so happy that she ignores his annoyance at being slapped in the back so hard and just thanks and continues to hug him. When he reaches school, he receives a text from Cosmos asking him to meet her as soon as possible. He is pulled out of his happy thoughts by Hina, who comes up to him with something to tell him. She takes him to the playground and tells him that she is really curious about him. She then leads him to a bench nearby, which gives him PTSD about all the other confession incidents. He warily moves to the bench to sit beside her, and what he thinks will be a romantic confession turns out to be her accusing him of being a sleazy womanizer. He tells him that she knows that he is stringing along Hina, Cosmos, and Pansy at once right now. She saw him leering at a girl at the baseball game last year where she was present as a reporter, which proved how much of an imbecile he was right away. She then pulls out photos that she has of him and the girls in suspicious positions. While her tries to protest, she refuses to believe him and pulls out the latest edition of the school newspaper where she has written a long-ass article about this. She tells him that the names will be omitted from the final version. She then adds that as a reporter she is strictly against giving out false information, and hence she will be shadowing him until the flower festival. If she finds him innocent, she will not distribute this news in the school, otherwise she will give it out at the festival itself, where a huge crowd including parents will be present. As he walks to his classroom with Hina in tow, he runs into Cosmos, who claims to have come to see him like they had planned, referring to her texts. This immediately raises Hina's alarm, but she tells him that she was here just to discuss the fact that he was chosen for the flower dance this year, the girls being herself, Hina, and a first year named Kamada. Before he can say anything, she tells him that she has declined the invitation every year, but now since he has been chosen, she is really looking forward to it. All of this is being observed and noted by Hina, which pisses him off, and he asks her to leave him alone. At lunch that day, he discusses the issue with his friends, but none of the girls agree to stay away from him. Pansy suggests that they try to nip the issue at the bud instead. Realizing that asking the girls is useless, he turns to Sun for help, but he refuses, saying that he has other things to focus on. He is annoyed at his friends since the only time he has to ask for advice is lunch when Hina is holed up in her club room, but they all are just wasting his time. However, everyone continues on with their lunch, paying no heed to him, and since he too has no other friends, he gives in and joins them. After lunch, Sun leaves for baseball practice, and Cosmos suddenly asks Joro about his post-school plans. She tells him that she will be going to tell Kamada about the flower dance news and wants to take him along so that he can meet Kamada and get to know her. Joro refuses, saying that he does not want to get involved with this more than is absolutely necessary. This just leads to Cosmos bursting into tears and emotionally blackmailing him into saying yes. However, he asks her to act strictly with him as a senior who is guiding a junior so as to convince Hina that her three girlfriends theory is false. After school, as Joro approaches Cosmos with Hina in tow, she turns into a complete antagonist and screams at him and calls him names for being late. This makes Hina completely fangirl over her, and she starts interviewing her while they walk to Kamada's classroom. Cosmos spots her right outside her classroom and asks Joro to go talk to her. However, as soon as he approaches her, she gets scared and asks him to stay away from her, given the rumors going around about his foot fetish among the first years. Right on cue, Hina takes a note of this, and he gets annoyed and screams at the junior. She simply runs away, and Hina concludes that maybe the three girlfriends theory is false after all. What kind of girl would like to be associated with such a sleazy dude? Eventually, Kamada ends up refusing to participate in the flower dance, about which Cosmos notifies Joro over text. As Joro is digesting the news, Hina comes up to him and declares that she will still be shadowing him despite the accusations against him being disproved. She claims that she has now gotten really interested in him and would like to know more about him. This sentence wins him over, and he immediately agrees to the arrangement. She immediately switches the subject to the matter at hand and asks him what will happen to the third girl in the flower dance now that Kamada has declined. This makes Hina somewhat hopeful that she may be able to get selected and dance with Joro. Just then, Cosmos texts him saying that she has found someone to fill in the third position, which immediately lights him up. At lunch, when the gang meets, Cosmos declares that the third position will be filled in by Sun and that she has taken all the necessary permissions. Sun is in fact really excited as he gets something other than baseball to dedicate himself to for a while. All of them give in their all to the dance practice over the rest of the days and convince Pansy to join them too. All of the fun being had by the group just adds on to the hurt felt by Hina at not being able to join in. A week before the festival, Joro is suddenly approached by the classroom divas out of nowhere. They immediately start attacking him, and when he asks them what is going on, they slam the school newspaper on his desk with the accusatory article about him on the front page. As he is reeling from the surprise at the early release of the article, Cosmos walks in and tries to convince the class that this is fake news. However, this backfires as her sudden appearance and strong support for Joro makes everyone suspect that she is one of the three girls. This fiasco is interrupted by Hina rushing in and telling the others that she never intended to print it, yet as she never ended up confirming the news. The class ends up getting convinced, but the head diva vows to destroy Joro if it ends up being true. As soon as they leave, Hina apologizes to Joro and theorizes that maybe her article got mixed up by mistake with the ones ready to publish. Joro forgives her, and Cosmos plans to go back to the publishing office and ask them to recall all the copies that they have distributed so far. Hina stops her and takes up the responsibility of taking back all the copies upon herself to repent for her mistake. Cosmos then walks out behind her, saying that maybe it would be better for Joro if she were not here. The bad news just keeps piling up for Joro, as later that day Pansy informs him that Hima and Sun have decided not to come to the library anymore. Cosmos, who is waiting there for him, tells him that they must stop meeting as well. All that she has managed to do is make things worse for him. She even declares that they will be practicing individually for the dance from now on. As Joro is about to protest, Pansy cuts him off, saying that they should indeed keep their distance from each other for a while. Before he can process all of this, Cosmos heads out of the library and asks him to avoid the place for a while as well. That evening, Joro is sitting depressed in an empty classroom when Hina comes up to him and reassures him that she will clear his name. Joro, however, simply packs up his stuff and gets up to leave for home. When Hina asks him about dance practice, he tells her that they are not doing it anymore, which immediately makes her hate herself for ruining everything for Joro. He manages to calm her down, and as a way to make up for all of this, she offers to help him with the dance practice herself. He agrees to it, and it leads to the budding of a new friendship between them. Eventually, the day of the flower festival arrives. It has been a week since Joro has had any contact with any of his gang members, which leaves him pretty depressed. As he is sulking in the school corridors, he is approached by the divas, who remind him that they still intend to make him pay if the article ends up being true. They are interrupted by Hina showing up and saving Joro from their clutches. Joro is overcome by gratefulness towards Hina for being there by his side throughout the toughest week in his life. She then tells him that she plans to hand out the article on the second day of the festival if it turns out to be true. She does not want to ruin his dance today by making him worried about it and wishes him the best for it. Suddenly, he receives a call from Sun telling him that there is a major problem. He is standing outside the principal's office where members of the Ta are voicing their concerns about two boys dancing at the flower dance. Sun then apologizes, saying that he is dropping out of the dance then, and that they need to look for a girl to replace him. He asks Joro to not worry, however, as he will sort this out as soon as possible. As Joro tries to figure out a solution, he suddenly remembers his practice sessions with Hina and asks her if she will be okay taking part in the dance. He begs her to not deny, as there is no one else that he can ask. Little does he know that this is more or less a dream come true for Hina, and she immediately agrees. Just as Joro is about to call Cosmos to let her know about this update, the president walks up to them herself and tells them that she has been looking for them. She has overheard the conversation and asks Joro if he is sure about Hina being the substitute. When he confirms, she asks Hina to come to the student council room with her because she needs to tell her something that Joro should not hear at all. However, Hina insists that she wants Joro to be there with her, and Cosmos has no option but to eventually agree. Once they are settled in the room, Cosmos, to everyone's surprise, declares that she is rejecting Hina's participation in the dance. She reminds Hina that her main focus should be putting together a newspaper to retract her allegations about Joro and distributing it. Before diving further into her reasoning behind this, Cosmos once again asks Hina if she is sure about Joro being here. When she does not budge from her thoughts about it, Cosmos then agrees to proceed unaffected by the threats about publishing this incident in the paper that Hina throws at her. Cosmos then confronts Hina about lying to everyone and deceiving Joro. Even though Hina knew that Joro did not have 3 girlfriends, she drove him into a corner. She intentionally stayed away from the most important time of his day, which was the lunch hour, where she would have gotten to see the true nature of their relations with each other. Hina makes the excuse that she had work of putting together articles in the newspaper office, but Cosmos counters her, saying that she could have done that in the library as well. She then goes on to tell Hina that she has been talking to students over the past week and has confirmed that weird rumors about Joro always seem to go around during lunch and spread mainly among the first years. When Hina denies having anything to do with it, Cosmos pulls up another incident that she had analyzed. She confirms that on the day of the article leak, the person responsible for printing was not Hina. However, she was sure that Hina messed with the articles after school on the previous day. She reveals that she had found the real key sheet of the newspaper room, which had Hina's name on it. The moment the article was passed out, Cosmos suspected Hina and went straight to the newspaper room to make a copy of the key checkout log. She then entered Joro's class and purposely brought up the newspaper room to verify her suspicions. As soon as Hina rushed to take up the responsibility herself, the culprit was obvious. She went back to get the current key sheet as part of the formal investigation, and seeing that Hina had altered it pretty much led her guilt bare. The top president also confirmed this morning that Hina was the one who brought up the issue with the flower dance. She then reveals that she knows all about Hina's intentions with Joro. Hina wanted to isolate him so that she could be the only one by his side. But when he was chosen for the flower dance, she gained a new objective of joining the dance herself. She wanted to bond with Joro and end up marrying him, as the legend says. Hina finally agrees that there is no way out of this and confesses that at the baseball game last year, where Joro saved her from a stray foul ball, he pushed it out of the way just before it could hit her, which made him look so heroic that she fell in love with him right away. Back in the room, Hina continues claiming that she is the only one who should be with Joro. He asks his friends to leave him alone and let him be with her. Cosmos calls her out on her toxic bullshit and calms her down by giving her a lecture on healthy relationships. Hina then confesses her love for Joro and begs him to be with him. Joro is so hurt, however, that he tells her that he has no feelings for her. He then goes on to scream at her for making everyone's life a mess and asks her to never show him her face again. Hina is taken aback, but soon she gathers herself and apologizes to Cosmos for the trouble before leaving to fix the newspaper, as Cosmos has asked her to. When she leaves, Cosmos reveals that she knows that Joro just put up a tough front to give Hina a push and did not actually mean anything. Embarrassed at being caught red-handed, he immediately changes the topic and expresses his concern about the messed-up flower dance. To that, Cosmos calmly replies that the substitution has already been sorted out by Hina, Sun, and her. Right on cue, Pansy enters looking absolutely pretty and sweeps Joro right off his feet. At the dance, Hina and Joro go first, and Hina confesses that she does not have a crush on anyone anymore. Next comes Cosmos, who notices his worry and reassures him that no one knows Hina's secret apart from herself, Sun, and Joro. Next comes Pansy, and she looks so different that no one in the entire school is able to recognize her. Cosmos is worried about the amount of chatter in the audience, but as soon as they start dancing, they are so graceful that a complete silence falls over the auditorium. Pansy thanks Joro for trying to get her to make friends by getting his friends over in the library. When she asks him the reason for doing so much for her, he admits that he is grateful to her for helping him out of the bind. As they conclude their dance, the audience erupts into cheers. As they go backstage to their friends, Pansy thanks the gang for the awesome experience, and they all agree to keep meeting despite this little project of theirs coming to a close. The morning after the festival, Joro wakes up in the morning to find his mom uncharacteristically cheerful. She tells him that she will not be making his lunch as she assumes that he will be eating out with his friends. When he is confused by how she knows about him going out, she tells him that his friend told her. He turns around to see Pansy sitting in the living room waiting for him, which shocks him speechless. Over breakfast, Joro asks Pansy why she is here. She tells him that she ran into his mother by coincidence during her daily stalking session and she invited her here. When he questions his mom about this, she tells him that she saw Pansy reading her favorite book in a store, so she started talking to her. She then saw Pansy standing outside their house later and invited her in right away. Pansy then tells him that she has gotten tickets for them to go to the water park, and they decide to leave after breakfast. Eventually, the entire gang arrives at the pool and Joro cannot hold himself together, looking at all the fun around him. After a day of playing and racing in the pool, they decide to grab some drinks. As Joro stands in the line at the stalls, he tries to memorize the list of orders by saying it out loud. Hearing his voice, the girl in front of him turns around and gets pissed to see him there. When she sees how confused he is, she just turns back embarrassed and admits that she mistook him for someone else. She then elaborates on the situation and tells him that she was mean to this creepy dude once and he has been following her around since. She asks him what to do beyond just apologizing to him, but Joro simply says that an apology should suffice. She then tells him that people were very mean to the guy because of her, so it is her duty to do something more than just an apology to make it up to him. She asks him what would he want if he were in the boy's place, and is just faced by immeasurable disappointment when his only answer is an apology. He then tells her to apologize sincerely as he is pretty sure that it will get through to the guy. And if she is not on good terms with him right now, she does not have anything to lose as things are already at the worst they can be. As Joro picks up his order and starts walking to his friends, he is stopped again by the girl who offers him a drink as a thank you and walks away. Just as he sets the drinks down and sits down to relax with his friends, the girls all pounce on him to go have fun with them. Hima asks him to go on a water slide, and when he agrees, Cosmos asks him to come with her instead, followed by Pansy, who has something else in mind. The girls all start fighting and Joro interrupts to calm them down, saying that he can do all the activities. The girls then turn this into a competition by seeing who Joro has the most fun with, and Joro will have to do whatever the winner says. Completely ignoring what Joro has to say about the matter, the girls all agree to this plan. Instead of helling his best friend out, Sun just cheers the girls on and sits back to watch the fun. They first go to the water slide as Hima wanted, and on the way Joro's opinion about the plan does a complete backflip. At this point, all he can think of is the fact that 3 beautiful girls are working their pretty asses off to make him happy. As they are sliding down the water slide, Joro is enjoying the closeness. However, by the time they are at the bottom, he ends up losing his shorts. Just as Hima is about to get a peek at his package, Sun jumps into the water and blocks Joro from her view to protect his dignity. Next up is Cosmos, who takes him to the dolphin rides. Just as they are about to climb the dolphin, some kids run by teasing them, which makes Cosmos uncomfortable. Eventually, it turns into her daydreaming about marriage, and in her dreamy state, she ends up pushing the dolphin away with Joro sitting on it alone. To save him from the embarrassment of a guy sitting alone on a dolphin, Sun immediately jumps up behind him and they ride off into the sunset. This is followed by Pansy, who takes him to the hot water bath. As she settles in beside him, she thanks him for giving her the chance to experience so much fun with an entire group of friends. This leads to Joro thanking her in return for pushing him to make up with all of them, which somehow has brought them closer than before. Pansy then starts embarrassing secrets about him that she found out about him through her stalking, but again Joro is saved from the awkwardness by Sun, who walks in like a knight in shining armor. By the end of the activities, Joro has positively developed more feelings for Sun than for any of the girls. As they are about to leave the pool, the girls ask Joro for his final judgment on who was the most fun, and obviously he says that it was Sun. Joro then adds that he is completely ready to become Sun's bitch and do whatever Sun wants him to. They immediately run off into the sunset together, leaving the girls behind to fend for themselves. The next day at school, an updated newspaper is circulated clearing Joro of all the false publicity, and the divas come back to apologize to him for their behavior. Their lead Sam then walks in with her hair dyed jet black just the way he likes. He immediately recognizes her as the girl from the pool as she apologizes to him. As shocked as he is, this is the first day in a long time that Joro can actually feel at peace and happy inside the school. A few days later, a girl called Yoki transfers to their class. As soon as she enters the class, she comes up and kisses Joro's hand, which sends him into deep shock. Looking at her closely, he is taken back to the baseball game from a year ago. Knowing that Sun will be bummed from the loss, he had rushed over to the food stall and asked for all the skewers that they had because they were Sun's favorite. This was the same girl who was taking care of the stall that day. The teacher interrupts the flashback and calls Yoki back at the front for the introduction. She tells the class that they own a popular skewer chain. Immediately recognizing the name of the chain, Sun gets up and starts praising their skewers while all Joro can think about the kiss and its consequences. He turns around and immediately realizes that he was right to worry as he sees San and Hina seething with anger at her. Hima, on the other hand, is looking to fan up some more mischief and tells him that she will tell this to Cosmos and Pansy. Later that day, Yoki comes up to Sun and Hima while they are gathered around at Joro's desk. She tells them about the incident from the baseball game and tells them that she intends to pay Joro back for the massive help that he provided the store with by buying every skewer that they had. Yoki then notices San sulking and asks her if she too wants to be Joro's devotee like Yoki became earlier today. San starts denying that offer very passionately, which makes her denial kind of sus. Yoki, however, brings the topic back to herself and tells Joro that she would do anything that he wants. Their conversation is interrupted by the teacher walking in and causing everyone to rush back to their seats right away. This gives Joro time to weigh the consequences of taking Yoki up on her offer, and he ends up at the conclusion that she definitely wants something out of him. After all, why would a pretty girl be ready to do anything for him without asking for anything in return? After class, Joro is given the task to put the teacher's stuff in the staff room. He immediately sees this as an opportunity to get to know Yoki better, to smell out her true intentions, and requests her to help him. Once they have put the stuff in the staff room, Yoki immediately starts flirting with him, which makes him even more suspicious. As he is walking back towards the classroom lost in his thoughts, he does not see a banana peel lying on the floor. Just as he is about to step on it and trip, Yoki grabs onto him and pulls him away. Her closeness completely distracts Joro from his actual mission, and he has to remind himself to be focused until he has thoroughly investigated the situation. She interrupts his thoughts by telling him that she has brought homemade lunch and asks him if he wants to sit with her. He is immediately won over by the idea of an elaborate lunch and agrees to go, saying that he has not brought lunch today either way. He comes back to reality and remembers that he needs to investigate her intentions. He then tells her that he is feeling guilty having her do everything for him and straight up asks her if there is anything that he could do for her in return. As he waits for her answer, eager to find out her true evil side, she simply asks him to let her serve him, as that brings her joy. He is immediately stricken by this sentence, and he lets go of any skepticism that he had about her. He takes her to the library during lunch to meet his friends. As soon as the introductions are done, all of them start gorging down the food, except Cosmos, who is trying to build up guts to give Joro the handmade lunch that she packed for him today. Just as she is about to pull it out, Yoki hands him the tiffin that she has brought. As Cosmos is sulking awkwardly about the massive blooper that she just had, Joro asks her if he can have some of the lunch, which immediately uplifts her mood. After lunch, Pansy pulls out her famous handmade cookies for all of them to enjoy, while Joro is unable to move an inch due to the amount of food sitting inside him at the moment. Hima and Sun start talking about their tennis and baseball tournaments coming up, and Cosmos promises to organize a cheering squad for them and coordinate their schedules so that the games do not clash. This leads to Yoki asking Joro if he is good at anything, and when he refuses, she tells him that she is sure that he will pick some skill up here on out. After lunch, as everyone else leaves, Pansy asks Joro to stay behind. Joro clarifies right off the bat that he does not want to discuss Yoki, as he has finally found someone who is unconditionally in love with him, and he does not want to mess this up. Pansy immediately replies that she has no complaint about Yoki's behavior. In fact, she completely understands wanting to pay someone back for their help. She tells him that her real problem is how much of a pushover Joro is. He accepted Yoki's lunch, and even though he knew he would not be able to stomach it, he accepted Cosmos' lunch as well so as to not hurt her. She asks him to stop running away because in the process he will just end up hurting everyone by the end of it. She then changes the topic and hands him a book, claiming that it is her favorite book and she would really like them to have more topics to discuss with each other. When Joro warns her that he is a very slow reader, Pansy tells him that it is okay. She just asks him to tell her whenever he is done because she really wants to know his thoughts about it. He accepts the book and before leaving informs her that he has something to do after school that day related to some tradition and hence will not be able to come to the library. After school, just as he walks out of the convenience store, Hima runs out and jumps onto him out of nowhere. He is annoyed at being knocked to the ground randomly and screams at her to get off of him. On reaching home, he notices that he left his bag open, and when he checks, his fears come true as he cannot find Pansy's book that was in his bag. He runs back to the place where he was tackled and starts looking everywhere. Two girls, Cherry and Suki, who had seen him earlier that day, spot him again and walk up to him. They ask him what his trouble is. He tells them that he dropped a book here earlier today and was looking for the same. They agree to help him look and run over to the store to start their investigation there. They meet back after a while, but the girls do not seem very positive. They ask him if the book was really important, and when he confirms that it was, they reluctantly pull it out. While he is initially very happy to have found it, he soon notices that it is already very beat up at this point. He decides to buy another copy, but Cherry asks him if he knows what that book is really about. She claims that she has a friend who has that book and she had asked her how much it is worth. She whispers the number into his ear and he loses all color from his face as he is sure that he will never be able to buy it. She gives him the address of a bookstore that sells it. The next day at lunch, he intensely pores over a job magazine so that he can save up enough to replace that book. To distract him into resting for a while, Cosmos pulls out the lunchbox that she has packed for him again, but he does not seem to be able to get him mind off of the job search. This sets Cosmos crying and Sun tries to get Joro to pay attention at what is going on around him. Eventually, Hima loses her patience and snatches the magazine out of Joro's hands, which immediately shoots up his anger. Yoki then offers Joro a part-time job at her place, as they are really short-handed at the new store. Although he is initially reluctant, he immediately falls at her feet begging for the job when he hears the pay. This also means that he will no longer be able to make his after-school trips to the library, which makes Pansy very sad. Joro then asks her to stay back after lunch as there is something that he wants to tell her. After lunch, as soon as they are alone, he hands her the book back and sincerely apologizes for ruining it. He tells her that buying a new copy of this is why he needs the part-time job and promises to come back immediately once he has saved up enough for it. Pansy tells him that she does not need the new copy. Instead, if he wants to make up for it so badly, she wants him to come to the library after school instead of working part-time. However, Joro insists and in the end ends up getting his way. That evening after school, he shows up at Yoki's shop and puts on his new uniform as he prepares to start this new mini-adventure that he has set himself off on in order to make sure that all his loved ones are taken care of. Thanks a lot for watching this video, and watch the video on the screen next.